year was 2347, and humanity had finally earned its place among the stars. Earth's united fleet was small compared to the ancient empires that ruled the galaxy. But humans were proud of what they had built. They were newcomers to the galactic stage, eager to learn and grow alongside species that had traveled between stars for thousands of years. Admiral Catherine Cole stood on the bridge of the carrier Resolute, watching the holographic display of Earth's defensive perimeter. She was a woman in her late 50s with silver hair and sharp eyes. Everyone in the fleet knew her name. She was calm, brilliant, and loved by her crews. "Anything unusual on the sensors, Lieutenant?" she asked. Lieutenant Daniel Wright checked his console carefully. "Nothing strange, Admiral. Just regular merchant ships near Jupiter Station." "Quiet night," Ethra nodded and allowed herself a small smile. Peace was good. Humanity had worked hard for this peace, but 300 light-years away. That peace was already dead. High Commander Zethrak stood aboard his massive warship, the Eternal Fang. He was a towering creature with hard shell-like skin and sharp mandibles that clicked when he spoke. His species, the Valorians, had conquered dozens of worlds over thousands of years. They looked at humans the way a hunter looks at prey. "The humans are weak," Zethrak announced to his war council. "Their planet is rich with resources. Their people would make excellent slaves. The Galactic Council will not care if we eliminate a minor species. They never do." His officers clicked their mandibles in agreement. "We strike now," Zethrak continued, "before they grow stronger. Before they become a threat." The Valorian fleet consisted of 47 warships, each one larger and more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. They entered hyperspace with a single destination programmed into their navigation: Systems.Earth. When they emerged from hyperspace near Neptune, they found a small human monitoring station. The station had only seconds to send a warning before Valorian weapons turned it into dust and fire. The message reached Admiral Cole 17 minutes later. "Admiral, we have an emergency broadcast from Neptune Station," Communications Officer Lisa Grant said. Her voice was shaking. They reported over 40 hostile ships before the signal cut off. Catherine felt her heart turn to ice. "Sound General Quarters. Contact Admiral Peterson at Fleet Command immediately. Tell him we have an invasion." On Earth, the news spread fast. Television screens everywhere showed the same message: alien warships were coming. They had attacked without warning. They had sent no messages. They had made no demands. They had come to conquer. The first real battle happened near the asteroid belt. A patrol group of 12 human destroyers, led by Captain Marcus Webb aboard the Defiance, moved to intercept the Valorian advance force. They were hopelessly outmatched. Their weapons were weaker. Their shields were thinner. Their ships were smaller. Marcus knew all of this. He didn't care. "All ships, this is Captain Webb," he said into the fleet-wide channel. His voice was steady and strong. "Our job today is not to win. Our job is to buy Earth time. Make every shot count. Make these bastards pay for every kilometer they advance." The battle lasted 43 minutes. 9 human ships were destroyed, including 3 that rammed Valorian vessels when their weapons failed. But the humans took 6 enemy ships with them. High Commander Zethrak received the battle report with irritation. He had expected the humans to flee or surrender. Instead, they had fought like cornered animals. "Acceptable losses," he said, clicking his mandibles. "Continue the advance. These creatures will learn their place soon enough." The Valorian fleet reached Earth's orbit on a Tuesday morning. 8 billion humans looked up at their sky and saw death looking back at them. The alien warships hung above their world like dark clouds before a storm. The bombardment began without any warning. New York was the first city hit. Kinetic projectiles fell from orbit like the fists of angry gods. Buildings that had stood for centuries vanished in seconds. Millions of people died before they even understood what was happening. Then Beijing, then Mumbai, then Sao Paulo, then London. Then Cairo. Admiral Catherine Cole coordinated the desperate defense from an underground bunker in Colorado. Her face was wet with tears, but her voice remained steady as she issued orders. Current casualty estimates? She asked, though part of her didn't want to know. A young aide looked at his screen with hollow eyes. 200 million dead in the first hour, Admiral? The Valorians are targeting population centers. They're not trying to conquer us. They're trying to exterminate us. Catherine closed her eyes for a moment. 200 million people, gone. Just like that. Keep fighting, she said quietly. We keep fighting until we can't fight anymore. On the streets of Chicago, a young woman named Amy Porter pulled her younger brother from the wreckage of their apartment building. She was covered in dust and blood. Her ears were ringing from the explosions. Her home, her neighborhood, everything she had ever known was burning around her. But her eyes were not filled with fear. They were filled with rage. "It's okay, Danny," she whispered to her brother, carrying him toward a refugee convoy. "I've got you. We're going to survive this, and then we're going to make them pay for what they did. I promise you. I swear it on everything I am." Her brother was crying. Amy was not. She had moved past tears. She had moved past fear. Something hard and cold had taken root in her heart. Something that would grow over the coming months and years. The first day of the Valorian invasion killed 700 million humans. The Galactic Council, the governing body of civilized space, was informed of the attack within hours. Representatives of 47 species gathered to discuss the situation. They watched footage of burning cities and dying people. They read reports of the massacre. And then they issued a statement. The Galactic Council expresses concern regarding the ongoing conflict between the Valorian Dominion and the human species. We call for restraint from all parties involved and hope for a peaceful resolution to this unfortunate situation. That was all. No sanctions. No intervention. No help. The humans were a minor species, after all. Primitive. Unimportant. The galaxy had seen such conflicts before. The strong conquered the weak. That was simply how things worked. In her bunker, Catherine Cole read the Council's statement 3 times. Then she set down her datapad and looked at her officers. "So that's how it is," she said softly. "We're on our own." "Admiral," one of her officers said, "what do we do?" Catherine was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was different. Harder, colder. "We survive," she said. "We fight. We remember." She looked at each of them in turn. "And when we're strong enough, we make them all understand exactly what they did to us today." Outside, the bombardment continued. Cities burned. People died. The Valorians advanced across the planet, confident in their victory. They had no idea what they had just awakened. 3 weeks had passed since the invasion began. Earth was a wounded world. The Valorians controlled the skies. Their warships orbited the planet like vultures circling a dying animal. On the ground, their soldiers had established bases on every continent. 4 billion humans were dead. Half the population of Earth, gone in less than a month. The survivors were being sorted. The Valorians herded them into massive processing camps, where they decided who would live as slaves and who would die as useless. Families were torn apart. Children were separated from parents. The old and sick were taken away and never seen again. But the Valorians had made a terrible mistake. They thought the humans would accept their fate. They thought the survivors would be too broken to fight back. They were wrong. In the mountains of Montana, General Samuel Cross gathered what remained of the United Earth Defense Force. 30,000 soldiers had made it to his hidden base. Most of them were wounded. All of them had lost someone they loved. "We've lost the cities," Cross told his commanders in a cold underground bunker. "We've lost control of the sky. We've lost 4 billion of our people." He paused, looking at the tired, angry faces around him. "But we have not lost. Not yet. Not ever." Commander Diana Shaw stepped forward. She had commanded submarines before the invasion. Now she commanded whatever forces she could find. "Sir, I've been talking to resistance groups around the world," she said. "The Valorians control the surface, but they're struggling. They're not built for fighting in tunnels and mountains and jungles. Every day, they lose soldiers to ambushes. Every day, they lose equipment to sabotage. They thought this would be easy, Cross replied with a grim smile. They thought we would break like glass. Let's show them what humans are really made of. What they had was more than anyone expected. Underground factories, hidden before the bombardment, were still running. Day and night, they produced weapons and ammunition. Scientists worked with soldiers to create new weapons for guerrilla warfare. Farmers became fighters. Teachers became medics. Children became spies, moving through the camps and gathering information. Humanity was adapting. Humanity was learning. Humanity was getting angry deep beneath the Pacific Ocean. Hidden under miles of dark water, the submarine carrier Leviathan waited. It was a massive ship, originally built for deep-sea exploration and rescue missions. Now it served as humanity's last mobile command center, Captain Frank. Morrison commanded the Leviathan with quiet determination. He was a patient man, the kind who could wait years for the right moment to strike. "We've received orders from Admiral Cole," he told his crew. "Operation Comeback is authorized. We're going to coordinate all remaining naval forces for a counterstrike." Lieutenant Maria Santos looked up from her console with confusion. "Sir, with respect, what naval forces?" "The Valorians destroyed everything in orbit." It was not a pleasant smile. "They destroyed our military fleet," he said. "But before the attack, we had 3 dozen supply ships scattered across the outer solar system. The Valorians ignored them. They were too focused on Earth to care about cargo ships near Jupiter and Saturn. What are those ships doing now? Gathering, refueling, and most importantly, arming themselves." Morrison's eyes gleamed with dark satisfaction. "Asteroid mining explosives, nuclear weapons from our hidden stockpiles, and a few special surprises from our research division." On the surface, the resistance grew bolder every day in the ruins of Paris. A cell led by former history professor Henry Blake destroyed a Valorian ammunition depot. The explosion lit up the night sky and could be seen for 50 kilometers in the jungles of Brazil. Indigenous fighters worked alongside surviving soldiers to ambush Valorian patrols. They used their knowledge of the land to strike fast and vanish into the green darkness before the enemy could. Responded in the processing camp outside Moscow, a young engineer named Kevin Torres made a discovery that would change everything. "Their shields," he whispered to his fellow prisoners during the night. "I've been watching the guards for weeks. When they recharge their weapons, their personal shields flicker off for about 2 seconds. There's a gap in their protection." A woman next to him, a former Olympic athlete named Grace Kim, listened carefully. 2 seconds, she repeated. "That's not much time." "It's enough," Kevin said. "Trust me, it's enough." They spent 2 weeks preparing. They made weapons from anything they could find: sharpened metal, rocks, stolen tools. They identified every guard position and every patrol route. They trained in secret, practicing their moves over and over until they could do them in their sleep. The uprising began at dawn. When the guards recharged their weapons, the prisoners attacked. They struck during the 2-second window, overwhelming the Valorians with pure fury and numbers. Within minutes, the camp's central command post was on fire. By noon, 15,000 humans had escaped into the Russian wilderness. They took weapons, supplies, and something even more valuable. Hoped High Commander Zethrak received the news with growing concern. His forces controlled the planet, yet they were bleeding. Every day, more soldiers died. Every day, more resources went to hunting resistant cells instead of processing slaves. "These creatures are not rational," his second-in-command observed. "They cannot win this war." "Why do they keep fighting?" Zethrak had no answer. In his experience, conquered species accepted their fate. They submitted. They obeyed. They did not fight endless guerrilla wars against impossible odds. "Increase patrols," he ordered. "Double the guards at all processing centers. Find these resistance groups and destroy them." But for every cell they destroyed, 2 more appeared. For every leader they killed, 3 more rose to take their place. The humans were not breaking. They were multiplying in her underground bunker in Australia. Admiral Catherine Cole reviewed the latest intelligence with something she had not felt in weeks: Hope. The Valorians have pulled 2/3 of their fleet back to their own territory, she said. They think the conquest is finished. They've left only a skeleton force in orbit. General Cross studied the holographic display. They're getting comfortable. They think we're beaten, and it's time to show them how wrong they are. Catherine straightened her shoulders. We launch Operation Comeback in 72 hours. Every resistance cell, every hidden ship, every weapon we've been saving, everything at once. That's a big risk, Admiral. If we fail, we lose everything. Catherine looked at him with eyes that had seen too much death. If we don't try, we've already lost. I'd rather die fighting than live as a slave. Wouldn't you? Cross nodded slowly. Yes, ma'am. I would. Across Earth, the word went out through hidden channels. Prepare. Arm yourselves. The counterattack is coming. In a refugee camp in Argentina, Amy Porter received the message. She had spent the past weeks organizing survivors, teaching them to fight, keeping hope alive in the darkness. It's time, she told her people. Everything we've been preparing for. Everything we've been waiting for. It's finally time. She looked up at the night sky, at the Valorian ships orbiting far above, and she smiled. It was not a kind smile. You think you've beaten us? She whispered. You have no idea what's coming. Operation Comeback began not with explosions, but with silence. Across the entire planet, resistance cells went completely dark. Attacks stopped. Radio communications ended. The constant harassment that had plagued Valorian forces for weeks suddenly vanished. As if it had never existed, Sub-Commander Velthra, who led the Valorian ground forces, noticed the change immediately. She stood in her command center, watching screens that showed nothing but quiet villages and empty roads. What are they doing? She demanded. Perhaps they have finally accepted defeat, one of her officers suggested. Perhaps they have run out of fighters. Velthra clicked her mandibles nervously. She had fought many wars on many worlds. This felt wrong, or perhaps, she said slowly, they are planning something. She was right in orbit. The skeleton Valorian fleet maintained routine patrols. The officers were bored. They had spent weeks watching a conquered planet, dealing with nothing but occasional debris and the normal business of occupation. They had stopped expecting any real threat from the broken world below. They did not see the 37 modified cargo ships approaching from the asteroid belt. The ships ran silent, using minimal power, drifting like rocks through the darkness of space. Some had been civilian freighters. Others had been mining vessels or research ships. Now they were weapons, loaded with everything humanity had been able to gather over the past desperate weeks. Captain Frank Morrison coordinated the attack from the Leviathan, which remained hidden beneath the Pacific Ocean. All ships report ready, Lieutenant Maria Santos announced. Her voice was tight with tension. Morrison took a deep breath. This was the moment. Everything they had worked for, everything they had suffered for, came down to the next few hours. Execute Phase 1. The cargo ships attacked as one. Mining lasers that had once cut through asteroids now sliced through Valorian hull plating. Improvised kinetic weapons, essentially metal rods accelerated to incredible speeds, punched holes in enemy reactors. Nuclear warheads, hidden aboard ships marked as carrying grain or medical supplies, detonated against shield generators. The attack was brutal. It was overwhelming, and it was utterly unexpected in the first 10 minutes. The humans destroyed 21 Valorian ships. Alarms screamed across the remaining Valorian vessels. Officers who had been sleeping or relaxing suddenly found themselves in the middle of a battle they had never imagined possible. Where did they come from? Shouted the commander of the patrol fleet. They were supposed to be destroyed. No one had an answer. No one had time for answers. They were too busy dying on the surface of Earth. The signal went out through every hidden channel. Attack. Now, everything. From mountains and forests and underground bunkers. Human forces emerged like water bursting through a dam. Coordinated strikes hit Valorian command centers, supply depots, communication nodes, and guard posts. The uprising was planetary in scale, and it happened everywhere at once. Amy Porter led her squad against a Valorian garrison in what had once been Denver. She had spent weeks studying their routines, memorizing their patrol patterns, identifying their weaknesses. She knew exactly when their shields would flicker. "Move on my mark," she whispered into her radio. Her heart was pounding, but her hands were steady. 3, 2, 1, go. Her squad struck at the exact moment the guards recharged their weapons. Improvised explosives breached the garrison walls. Fighters poured through the gaps. Hand-to-hand combat followed, fierce and merciless. The Valorians were stronger than humans. They were bigger. They were better armed. But they had never faced an enemy this determined. They had never fought people who were willing to die if it meant taking their killers with them. By sunrise, Denver was free. Similar scenes played out all over the world, in Tokyo. A coalition of survivors attacked the harbor district. They used fishing boats rigged with explosives to destroy Valorian landing craft. They fought through the streets with kitchen knives and stolen rifles. In Johannesburg, former miners used their knowledge of underground tunnels to trap and destroy an entire Valorian battalion. They collapsed tunnels on alien soldiers. They flooded chambers with water. They showed no mercy because they had been shown none. In Cairo, civilians armed with nothing but stones and courage overwhelmed a processing center. They freed thousands of prisoners, who immediately joined the fight. "Hi," Commander Zethrak received the reports in his command. "Chamber aboard the Eternal Fang." Each message was worse than the last. His fleet was being torn apart in orbit. His ground forces were being overwhelmed on the surface. Everything was falling apart. "How is this possible?" he demanded. They were defeated. They were broken. "Apparently not, Commander," Velthra replied through the communication link. Her voice was strained. "We underestimated them badly." Zethrak made a decision in that moment. A decision that would haunt his species for generations. "Recall the fleet," he ordered. "All of it. Every ship we have. We will return to this world with overwhelming force and burn it to glass. Not one human will survive." The order went out across Valorian space. Every warship, every carrier, every battle cruiser was redirected to Earth. The full military might of the Dominion would crush this uprising once and for all. But the fleet recall would take 3 weeks, and humans do not. Wait, Admiral Catherine Cole received intelligence about the fleet recall within hours. She immediately contacted every Allied outpost and resistance leader. "We have 21 days, she announced. "In that time, we need to do what no one thinks is possible. We need to build a space fleet." The response was incredible. Every factory that could be captured was captured. Every ship that could be modified was modified. Civilian vessels were armored with salvaged metal and armed with whatever weapons could be fitted to them. Space stations that the Valorians thought they had destroyed revealed hidden survivors. These people had been living in darkness for weeks, quietly manufacturing weapons and ship components, waiting for exactly this moment, and in a research facility deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Dr. Raymond Peters unveiled humanity's secret weapon. "We call it the null field generator," he explained to Admiral Cole through a secure channel. "We've been studying Valorian shield technology since the invasion began. We found a weakness. This device disrupts the energy patterns that make their shields work. Within its range, Valorian ships become just as vulnerable as ours." Catherine felt a spark of hope ignite in her chest. "How many of these devices do you have?" Peter smiled for the first time in months. "Enough, Admiral. We have enough." 20 days later, humanity was ready. 300 human vessels gathered in formation between Earth and the expected Valorian approach vector. They were a patchwork fleet. Military destroyers flew alongside converted cargo freighters. Research ships mounted with missile launchers held position. Near mining vessels with modified drilling lasers, they were not pretty. They were not elegant, but they were armed, they were ready, and they were very angry. Captain Marcus Webb, who had survived the first battle of the invasion, now commanded a squadron of 10 converted cargo ships. He looked at the fleet gathered around him and felt something he had not felt since the war began. Pride. "Look at what we built," he said quietly to his crew. Look at what we did with nothing but desperation and rage and hope. Those alien bastards have no idea what's about to hit them." On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Cole watched her displays and waited. Somewhere out there, the full Valorian fleet was approaching. 98 warships, each one more powerful than anything in her makeshift armada. The odds were terrible. The situation was desperate, and yet Catherine Cole smiled. "Let them come," she whispered. "Let them see what humanity can do when we have nothing left to lose." The Valorian fleet dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find a broken world waiting for destruction. What they found instead made High Commander Zethrak freeze in disbelief. 300 human vessels hung in space between his fleet and Earth. They were arranged in a battle formation, weapons armed, shields raised. They were waiting for him. "Possible," Zethrak breathed. "We destroyed their fleet. We destroyed everything." Velthra's voice came through the communication system. "We destroyed their military fleet, Commander. It appears that every human vessel is now a warship. They built an entire navy in 3 weeks." Zethrak stared at the display. Cargo ships with missile launchers welded to their hulls. Mining vessels with their drilling lasers pointed outward. Civilian transports armored with metal plates. It was the most ridiculous, desperate, impossible thing he had ever seen. It was also terrifying. "Open a channel." Admiral Catherine Cole ordered from the bridge of the Resolute. Her face appeared on screens across both fleets. She looked tired. She looked old, but her eyes burned with a fire that made even Zethrak uncomfortable. "This is Admiral Catherine Cole of the United Earth Defense Force, addressing the Valorian Dominion," she said. Her voice was calm and cold as deep space. "You came to our world without warning. You've killed 4 billion of our people. You murdered children. You tore families apart. You tried to turn us into slaves." She leaned forward, and her calm expression cracked to reveal something savage underneath. "You thought you could break us. You were wrong. Today you will face the full fury of a species you tried to murder. We will not offer you terms. We will not accept your surrender. You came to slaughter us. Now you will learn what that decision has cost you." The channel closed. Zethrak clicked his mandibles nervously. "She is bluffing. Their ships are held together with scrap metal and hope. They cannot possibly match our firepower. Then let us finish them quickly," one of his officers suggested. "Agreed. All ships advance. Destroy everything." The Valorian fleet surged forward. The first wave hit the human defensive line like a hammer hitting glass. Plasma cannons and gravity weapons tore into human ships, breaking them apart. Dozens of vessels exploded in the opening minutes of battle. The Valorians pressed their advantage, confident in their superior technology. Then the null field generators activated across the entire battle space. Valorian shields flickered and died. Ships that had shrugged off nuclear weapons suddenly found themselves exposed to every attack. Human missiles that had been useless against Valorian defenses suddenly punched through unprotected holes. Explosions rippled through the Valorian formation. "What is happening?" Zethrak screamed. "Why are our shields failing?" No one could answer him. No one understood. The technology they had relied on for centuries was simply not working anymore. "Captain." Marcus Webb saw the confusion in the Valorian ranks and smiled like a wolf. "All ships, concentrate fire on their flagship support vessels," he ordered. "If we can isolate the Eternal Fang, we can cut the head off the snake." A squadron of converted cargo ships drove into the Valorian formation, weapons blazing. They were taking hits, losing ships. But they kept pushing forward. The human fleet fought with a ferocity that the Valorians had never experienced. Ships that should have retreated continued attacking until they were destroyed. Captains who had lost all weapons rammed their vessels into enemy targets. Crews fought until they drew their last breath on the bridge of a destroyer called the Last Hope. Captain Amanda Green found her ship surrounded by 3 Valorian cruisers. Her weapons were damaged. Her shields were gone. Her crew was dying. "Captain, we should surrender," her first officer said desperately. Amanda laughed. It was not a happy sound. "Surrender? They didn't accept our surrender when they bombed our cities. They didn't accept surrender when they put our children in camps." She turned to her helmsman. Set collision course for the nearest cruiser. Maximum speed. Captain, ... That's an order. The last hope accelerated directly toward the Valorian cruiser. At the last second, Amanda activated the ship's self-destruct. The explosion destroyed both vessels. Stories like this played out across the battlefield. Human ships died, but they took Valorians with them. Every loss cost the enemy something precious. Every sacrifice bought time for the ships that survived in the chaos of battle. A small strike force led by Commander Diana Shaw broke through the Valorian lines. Her ship, the Neptune's Fury, was a modified submarine converted for space combat. It was not built for this. It was not designed for this. But Diana flew it anyway. "We have a clear path to the Eternal Fang," she reported to Admiral Cole. "Take it," Cole ordered. "End this." The Neptune's Fury accelerated toward the Valorian flagship. Defensive fire hammered the ship's improvised shields. Systems failed one by one. Crew members died at their stations. But Diana kept going. "Prepare the nuclear payload," she ordered. "We're targeting the bridge." Lieutenant Kevin Park, her weapons officer, looked at her with understanding in his eyes. "Commander, if we detonate that close, we won't survive the blast." Diana looked around at her crew. Every face showed fear. Every face also showed determination. They had all lost people in the invasion. They all wanted revenge. "I know," she said softly. "But this is our chance to end the war. This is our chance to save everyone still fighting on Earth." She met each of their eyes in turn. "Are you with me?" One by one, they nodded. "Then let's kill this bastard." The Neptune's Fury struck the Eternal Fang at full speed, slamming into the command section. In the instant before impact, Diana triggered the nuclear warhead. The explosion was blinding. When the light faded, the entire forward section of the Eternal Fang was gone. High Commander Zethrak and his senior staff had been vaporized instantly. The Valorian fleet, suddenly without leadership, fell into chaos. Ships that had been fighting in coordinated formations began to scatter. Commanders argued with each other over who was in charge. Some tried to retreat. Others continued fighting without direction, and the humans showed no mercy. For 3 hours, human fleet hunted down fleeing Valorian vessels. Some ships tried to surrender, broadcasting messages of peace and offers of negotiation. The humans ignored them. Missiles struck surrendering ships just as easily as fighting ships. Others tried to escape into hyperspace. Human vessels followed them, continuing the attack, even as both fleets jumped across light years of space. There would be no escape. Admiral Cole watched the slaughter from the Resolute. Part of her knew this was wrong. Part of her remembered the laws of war, the rules about prisoners, the importance of mercy. But then she remembered the faces of the children in the processing camps. She remembered the cities burning. She remembered 4 billion dead. "Destroy them all," she ordered. "Every single one." When the battle finally ended, 95 Valorian warships had been destroyed. Only 3 managed to escape, and those were so badly damaged that they barely made it home. The human fleet had lost 173 vessels. Thousands of humans had died, but they had won. On the bridge of the Resolute, Admiral Cole sat in her command chair and stared at the empty space where the Valorian fleet had been. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes were wet with tears. Lieutenant Daniel Wright approached her carefully. "Admiral, it's over?" "No," Catherine replied. Her voice was hollow. "It's not over. Not even close." She stood up and addressed her crew. "Today we defended our home. Tomorrow, we go on offense. The Valorians thought they could destroy us and face no consequences. They were wrong. We're going to teach the entire galaxy what happens when you try to exterminate humanity." Around her, the surviving fleet began to regroup. They were battered. They were broken. They had lost so much, but they were not finished. Not by a long shot. The war for survival was over. The war for revenge was just beginning. The Galactic Council had watched the war between Earth and the Valorian Dominion with distant interest. Such conflicts between major powers and primitive species happened all the time. The outcome was always the same. The primitives lost. The galaxy moved on. When reports arrived that the humans had somehow defeated the Valorian fleet at Earth, the Council dismissed them as exaggeration. When evidence showed that humans were building a massive invasion force, they assumed it was defensive posturing. When the human fleet jumped into Valorian space and began attacking everything in sight, the Council finally started paying attention. Ambassador Zethfa, the new representative of what remained of the Valorian Dominion, burst into the council chambers with terror in every movement of his body. "They're coming," he announced to the assembled species. "The humans, they're not stopping at their own borders. They're invading our territory. They're attacking our colonies." Council Speaker Arthon, an ancient being made of living crystal, glowed with confusion. "Invading? Surely you mean retaliating? A limited strike to discourage future aggression, perhaps?" "No." Zethfa's voice cracked with fear. "They have attacked 17 of our colonies already. They are heading toward our homeworld, and they are not taking prisoners." The council chamber fell completely silent, far away, aboard the newly built dreadnought Vengeance. Admiral Catherine Cole watched as human forces destroyed another Valorian military installation. The station broke apart in slow motion, pieces of metal and bodies drifting into the void. "What's our next target?" she asked calmly. "Valorian shipyard at Nexus 3, her tactical officer reported. "Heavy defenses. Break them." Earth had not simply rebuilt. Earth had transformed. Every factory produced weapons. Every shipyard built warships. Every scientist worked on military technology. The entire planet had become a machine with a single purpose: revenge. General Samuel Kraus led ground forces in the invasion of Valorian worlds. Unlike the Valorians, humans did not slaughter civilians or put people in camps, but they destroyed every military base, every weapon factory, every ship they could find. The message was clear: what you did to us, we will do to you. Only worse, the Galactic Council held an emergency session. Representatives of 47 species gathered to discuss what they called the human crisis.
Out.
"They must be stopped," demanded Ambassador Krell of the Mantheri hegemony. "This unchecked aggression threatens the stability of the entire galaxy." Unchecked aggression? The voice came from the human delegations section, which had been empty since before the invasion. Now a woman walked forward. She was young, with dark hair and eyes that had seen too much death. Her name was Amy Porter, survivor of Chicago, leader of the Denver Resistance, newly appointed Earth ambassador. "You speak of unchecked aggression," Amy continued, her voice echoing through the massive chamber. "Where was your concern when the Valorians attacked Earth without warning? Where was this council when they murdered 4 billion of our people? Where were you when they herded our children into processing camps to be sorted like animals?" She walked to the center of the chamber, surrounded by alien representatives who watched her with a mixture of fear and fascination. "We asked for help," Amy said. "We begged for intervention. We screamed into the void for someone, anyone, to care that our species was being exterminated." Her voice grew harder. "And you know what you did? You issued a statement. You expressed concern. You called for restraint." She laughed bitterly. "Restraint. You called for restraint while our cities burned and our people died. You did nothing because we were small. We were primitive. We were nobody important." Ambassador Krell shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "The Council does not interfere in regional conflicts between ... regional conflicts." Amy cut him off. "You call genocide a regional conflict? You have laws, don't you? Rules against unprovoked attacks on developing species. The Valorians violated every single one of those rules. And you looked away because enforcing them would have been inconvenient." Council Speaker Arthon tried to restore order. "Ambassador Porter, the Council is prepared to discuss a mediated peace settlement. Perhaps reparations could be arranged and boundaries established." "No." The single word echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. "There will be no mediation," Amy said firmly. "There will be no settlement." There will be no negotiation. The Valorians came to murder our entire species. They came very close to succeeding. Now we will make sure they never have the ability to threaten anyone ever again. You cannot simply destroy a spacefaring civilization, Arthur protested. The precedent this sets, ... The precedent, Amy interrupted, was set by you. When you allowed the Valorians to attack us. When you watched and did nothing. When you decided that the lives of 8 billion humans were an acceptable price for galactic stability. She turned slowly, making eye contact with as many representatives as she could. Every species in this chamber needs to understand something very clearly. Humanity will never forget what was done to us. We will never forget who did it. And we will never forget who stood by and watched it happen. She paused to let her words sink in. You're not asking for permission to continue our campaign against the Valorians. We are not asking for your approval or your support. We are informing you, as a courtesy, that the Valorian Dominion will cease to exist as a military power. Any species that helps them will be considered an enemy. Any species that gets in our way will be treated accordingly. Ambassador Zethva rushed toward her, his movements desperate. Please, we surrender. We will pay whatever reparations you demand. We will return any prisoners we still hold. We will do anything. You should have thought about that before you started dropping bombs on our cities, Amy replied coldly. Before you killed our families. Before you tried to enslave our entire species. She shook her head. It's too late for surrender. It was too late the moment your ships entered our solar system. She turned back to address the full council one final time. What we are doing is not revenge. Revenge is emotional. Revenge is personal. What we are doing is sending a message. We want every species in this galaxy, every civilization, every empire to look at what happens to the Valorian Dominion and understand one simple truth. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper, but somehow it carried to every corner of the chamber. Never again. Never try to exterminate humanity. Never assume we are too weak to fight back. Never believe we will simply accept destruction. She smiled, and there was nothing warm in it. Because if you do, we will find you. We will break you. And we will make you an example for everyone else. She walked out of the chamber without another word. 2 months later, the human fleet reached the Valorian homeworld. The final battle lasted 6 hours. When it ended, the Valorian military was completely destroyed. Their shipyards were rubble. Their weapons factories were craters. The species survived. Their ability to wage war did not. The Galactic Council held many sessions to discuss what to do about humanity. Some wanted sanctions. Some wanted isolation. Some wanted to form a military alliance to contain the human threat. Every proposal failed. The truth, whispered in private meetings and quiet corridors, was simple. The council was terrified. They had watched a primitive species, one they had written off as already dead, rise from the ashes and destroy an empire that had existed for 10,000 years. They had seen humans fight with impossible determination, refuse to surrender under any circumstances, and pursue their enemies across the galaxy with relentless purpose. And they had seen humans. Remember, in the decades that followed, Earth became a major galactic power. Human technology advanced rapidly. Human influence spread. Human fleets patrolled trade routes and protected allied worlds. But more than anything, human reputation spread. Species that had once dismissed humans as primitive newcomers now treated them with careful respect. Conflicts that might have become wars were resolved through diplomacy. With nervous glances toward Earth, Amy Porter served as ambassador for 30 years. In her final address to the council, she reflected on everything that had happened. We didn't want this war, she said. We were happy to learn, to explore, to find our place among the stars peacefully. The Valorians took that choice away from us. They made us what we are now. She looked around at the assembled representatives, many of whom had known her for decades. We remember everything. The burning cities. The people we lost. The council that did nothing. She smiled gently. But we have also learned to hope again. To build. To help others. We are not just the species that destroyed the Valorians. We are the species that rebuilt our world. We reach out to former enemies. We help developing worlds grow strong. Her smile faded slightly. Just never make the mistake of thinking we have forgotten how to be savage. That knowledge lives in our bones now. We pray every day that we never have to use it again. But if anyone else decides to try what the Valorians tried, she left the sentence unfinished. She didn't need to complete it. Every species in the galaxy understood. Some lessons, once learned, are never forgotten, and humanity had learned the hardest lesson of all. The universe does not care about the weak. Only the strong survive. Only the savage thrive. Earth would never be weak again.